For our next segment, we are talking about a plague on our time, a true epidemic, something that brings heartache to my life every day. Robert F. Kennedy. So, last week, RFK, our esteemed Secretary of Health and Human Services, responsible for running a huge organization that not only protects us from pathogens and illnesses, but also is responsible for helping to find and fund the most important research into health that may not benefit us today or tomorrow, but will save lives and improve lives for decades to come, decided that his biggest priority was to do a press conference about the scourge of autism.
Mm. Man, do I have a lot of shit to say about this. Okay, so I've spent a lot of time looking at the specific transcript. There has been a lot of things that he's said that have been put out there. There's one specific thing that he said, one specific quotation that he made, a statement that he made. That this one hasn't made the rounds as much, but this one finally convinced me on an issue that I've actually been struggling with back and forth. I've been going back and forth between trying to figure out is RFK just really, really fucking stupid, or is he lying on purpose? Like, is he lying about autism? Is he lying about vaccines on purpose? Does he know that he's lying? Yeah. And there's actually, and we'll get to this later, but there's a specific statement that he made that undeniably just verifies completely 100%. He knows exactly what he's fucking doing. Mm-hmm. He knows exactly what he is doing. He is lying on purpose. He is purposely trying to mislead you. But we will get to that. First off, let's discuss kind of the central arguments that he was making and discuss why they are bullshit. So, first off, one of the things that he brings up is the fact that since 1990, rates of autism have increased by 480%. All right. 22 years ago, the prevalence of autism among children was 1 in 150. I remember when I was in high school, the number was 1 in 70. And I remember that number specifically because I actually did a speech about autism, and I cited a specific source showing the numbers from the time. And the prevalence just 2 years ago was 1 in 36. All right, 1 in 36. So in 22 years, rates of autism among children has gone from 1 in 150 to 1 in 36, which is a staggering increase. Mm-hmm. All right. It's such an increase that RFK has gone so far as to refer to it as an epidemic. And he uses the term, for people that deny that it's an epidemic, he uses the term epidemic denial. I know, real original. And he is taught, and in this speech, he basically talked about how it is the mainstream media industry standard to be complicit with this epidemic denial, specifically because they don't want us to look into the environmental exposures that has been causing this vast increase, right? Now, remember I said that 2 years ago, the number was 1 in 36. Well, the reason why he was compelled to do this speech at this specific time is because there was a more recent number that put that specifically at 1 in 31, which means that it has increased even more in just the last 2 years. And one of the arguments that he points out to basically say, like, if you accept the epidemic deniers narrative, then you would basically have to say that researchers, he cites a specific example of a research study in North Dakota in 1987, that they found that autism rates were about 3.3 per 10,000, which was around in line with another study which had that number in 1 in 10,000 in Wisconsin 17 years before that. So that's 17 years before 1987. And again, remember, the most consistent numbers nowadays were 1 in 36, which is 83 times higher. What his argument then is that if you accept that there is not an epidemic happening, you basically would have to say that in North Dakota, they missed 98.8% of children with autism. You know, because in order for the epidemic deniers narrative to be correct, you would have to say that there is the same number of people on the autism spectrum today as existed back in 1987. All right. In order to accept that specific narrative, you would have to say that those were the same numbers, and that therefore those researchers missed 98.8% of the cases of autism. So here's why that's bullshit. So first off, and what I think is fucking amazing in this is the very easy response, the very easy counter argument to this is to point out the fact that what constitutes autism, what is diagnosable as autism, has broadened since 1987.
Exactly. It's like, well, his whole argument rests on the unintuitiveness that they would have missed 98.8% of people with autism. Except when you move the goalpost so that to expand the definition of what autism spectrum disorder is, then it becomes perfectly plausible that they might have missed 98.8% of the people with autism as it's defined today.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, he even addressed that counter argument. He said, quote, "One of the things I think we need to move away from today is this ideology, wow, that the autism diagnosis, that autism prevalence increases, the relentless increases are simply artifacts of better diagnosis, better recognition, or changing diagnostic criteria." He even addressed those arguments and just said, oh, we need to move away from that. Okay, why do we need to move away from that? Well, so here's the amazing line that he gives. The amazing line that he gives. Oh my God, this is the line right here that shows you that he knows he's fucking lying. Mm-hmm. Because there is one important number that completely disproves his entire fucking point. And I'll go a little bit more in depth into this number, and I'll go a little bit more in depth into more specific numbers that really disprove his point. But this specific number has a major role in disproving his entire point. At one point, he said, quote, "And most cases now are severe." All right. So you would probably define severe autism. No, I sometimes don't like that framing of like severe, high functioning, whatnot. But like, you know, the way that a lot of people would probably classify severe autism is potentially someone who's being nonverbal, someone who maybe can't use the bathroom by themselves, or other potential actions such as major head banging, major light sensitivities, doing stemming, toe locking, things like that. All right, you would probably define that as severe autism, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So what does the word most imply? What does the word most imply?
In this context, it would be a less precise version of the majority.
Yeah, exactly. Most implies a majority. Right after he says, and and most cases now are severe. He said, quote, so about 25% of kids who are diagnosed with autism are nonverbal, non-toilet trained, and other stereotypical features, headbanging, tactile and light sensitivities, stemming, toe locking, etc. 25%. 25% is not most.
Yeah.
25% is not most. 25% is not a majority. He fucking knows what the number is. He knows what the number is. That right there shows you why he is lying. But I'm not done, all right? Let's actually look at the specific numbers that show why this is fucking bullshit. Because the big thing that sparked this is that increase, is that recent study that basically showed that it's close to 1 in 30 now. All right, that major increase that showed that autism is that the prevalence of autism is 1 in 30 now. According to a study that was published in Public Health Reports, that was looking at autism rates, specifically among 8-year-olds between the years of 2002 and 2016, we can actually see the increase in the prevalence of both profound autism, which this study defines as basically having autism, having a form of autism that may include an intellectual disability or may basically preclude you from a certain level of independence. Basically, if you have autism that will make it so you won't be able to live independently, right? So it separates out profound autism, defining it as that, and non-profound autism. And what it found was that there actually was a little bit of an increase in terms of profound autism, in rates of profound autism between 2022 and 2016. That increase was 2.7 per 1,000 children, up to 4.6 per 1,000 children. So about a 2 per 1,000 children increase. Now, that is not a major spike, but when you look at the rates of non-profound autism, in 2022, the rate was 3.9 per 1,000 children, versus in 2016, it was 14.3. It went up by over 10 per 1,000 children. By over 10 per 1,000 children. That is where the increase comes from.
Yeah.
That is, like, it is measurable. It is easy to see. This completely disproves this entire fucking speech, the entire fucking premise of this speech, the entire fucking premise of the idea of calling this an epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
It is not the fact that it is actually, that the number of people who are autistic is actually increasing. It is the fact that there is better diagnostic criteria, and they've expanded the diagnostic criteria.
Yes.
All right? In 1987, I wouldn't have been diagnosed. All right? I wouldn't have been diagnosed with autism. Do you know why I know that? Because my dad is autistic, and he lived in 1997, and you know what he wasn't? Diagnosed with autism. Do you know what he has? Autism. And he wasn't diagnosed until his 40s because the criteria for diagnostic didn't include include his form of autism until way later.
Yes.
This is measurable. This is verifiable. What he is saying is verifiably false. And the fact that he knows that it is only about a quarter of people on the autism spectrum who are nonverbal, the fact that he knows that shows you that he is lying. Yeah. Shows you that he has known all along that everything that he says about autism is complete and utter bullshit, and he knows it. He is a liar. He is a charlatan. He is a piece of shit who is demonizing the entire autistic community for I don't even know for what. All right, to gain attention, to gain notoriety. I don't even know why you're feeling the need to demonize my entire community on your bullshit crusade. And in the meantime, the result is there are people that are listening to you. There are parents who are listening to you and not vaccinating their children for preventable diseases like measles, like mumps, like rubella, like polio. They're not vaccinating their children. And as a result, children are dying. Children are dying because you have pointed at people like me and basically said, that motherfucker over there, that autistic person over there, that is scarier than dying of measles. All right? Being like that person is scarier than dying of measles. All right? The entire premise of the anti-vax movement started from a study that was carried out in the 90s by a man who has since lost his license, is not even considered a doctor anymore. He lost his accreditation completely. The study was retracted because of major conflicts of interest. The sample size was only like a little over 10 people. I think it was about 12 people. He had major conflicts of interest in that he said, like, his final conclusion was, oh, don't use the multi-dose vaccine. All right, the mumps, measles, and rubella. It wasn't even about all vaccines. It was just about the MMR vaccine, the mumps, measles, and rubella vaccine. He said, don't use that. Use the single doses, a single dose of mumps, a single dose of measles, and a single dose of rubella. But guess who owned the fucking patents on that? Andrew Wakefield, the guy that did the study. All right, he owned the patents on that. And the people that funded his study, oh, guess what? They were lawyers who were representing families that were suing the British government, alleging that vaccines had caused autism, had hurt their children. All right, he had a vested interest in the results, saying exactly what they needed to say. And as if that's bad enough, in that study, the one that this entire fucking movement was sparked from, there were several parents that actually came forward years later and basically said, they misrepresented what I said. All right, I never said this. They misrepresented what I said. This is disinformation. All right.
So not only is he just demonizing a community and using them to scaremonger about this shit, he's also to Nathan's point, knows better and has access to the best information and studies about this thing and is just refusing to incorporate it. While he is not funding fucking cancer research, he wants to stand up funding into autism when the studies have already largely been done on the things he's talking about. To Nathan's point, like the debunking of vaccines causing autism is thoroughly studied and thoroughly validated and has clearly been ruled out. We know that, so the causes of autism are complex, but we know why, if we see background increases, like that could be the case. First of all, researchers have found that 60 to 90% is heritable, which makes sense, right? Like, it's just who we are. It's who our parents are. It's who our grandparents are. Like, it's like having red hair or green eyes in a lot of ways. Like, it's just us. In 40% of cases, doctors are able to find actually a specific genetic mutation. He said in his speech, genetics can't explain it. And in 40% of cases, doctors have identified a specific genetic mutation, right? And other than that, we've got larger social trends. Parents are more likely to have a child on the autism spectrum if they're older, right? Which our society and the world at large, and especially in developed countries, is moving more and more toward increasing the age of average age of childbirth, right? Similar if a child is more likely to be on the autism spectrum if they're born prematurely. And we are better and better at neonatal care and saving the lives of children that are born early. There are all kinds of reasons that have been studied, explanations that even if these trends were true, could help explain them. But it's just so clear that rather than actually seeking to understand what's going on, rather than understanding this community of people or this group of people, he's just using them as a scapegoat. And he's manipulating the data, and he's manipulating our stereotypes about them to do it.
Yeah. He said in the speech, quote, these are kids who will never pay taxes, they'll never hold a job, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write a poem, they'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted, and we have to recognize we are doing this to our children, and we need to put an end to it. He referred to autism as preventable. Here's the thing you need to understand. If autism is genetic, the only way that you prevent it is through eugenics. Now, I understand that he doesn't think it's genetic, but it is. He's just fucking wrong about that. It is. All right? And here's the thing. Here I am, an autistic, who pays taxes, who has a job, who has played baseball, not well, but I've played it, who has written poems, who has been on dates, and I do use the toilet unassisted.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, writing poems, I just read Nathan's first fucking book, RFK. You had to have a fucking ghostwriter write your shit. And
yeah.
And I happen to know Nathan was a total slut in high school. So so
I
screw
don't know
you,
if I accept that
RFK.
classification. Well, but here's the other thing. Even if we are talking about people who are nonverbal, like one of the things I take issue with is the whole never write a poem.
Yeah.
Like there are, first off, I mentioned that I don't know if I like the classification of severe or classification of profound, because I think that oftentimes I'm not to say that there aren't some instances, several instances in which people really do need extra assistance, like say through, because of certain intellectual disabilities or whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, even for the people on the spectrum that we would consider to be more severe, or for people that are nonverbal, it's not like they're not people.
Yeah.
It's not like there's nobody inside there.
Totally.
I have met and interacted with nonverbal autistics that were fucking brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't communicate using verbal speech, but they could communicate in other ways. I once met a nonverbal autistic who made claymation videos and was able to communicate using that, and they were brilliant. They were brilliantly edited. They were brilliantly created. I mean, it's you want to say that autistics can't, write poems, or I guess by extension be artists. They absolutely can. Even the people, even those 25% that you are talking about, they can do that. They can do that. Now, sometimes we might need extra assistance. And one thing that we do need to talk about, RFK, and if you actually want to help the autism community, which it's clear that you don't, but if you actually did, we should talk about, you said they'll never have a job. We should talk about employment rates among autistics. Only about a quarter of autistics have a job. And yet, a majority of autistics can actually live independently, are actually able to live independently. So the reason why there's such a low employment rate among autistics is because workforces are too often not built for us, are not built to accommodate people on the autism spectrum. So maybe, RFK, instead of focusing so much on how broken we are, maybe you could fix the society around us that doesn't let us in to begin with. All right? Maybe you can work on that. If you do that, you could actually do some good. All right? If you do that, maybe you could actually make a difference, because that is what we need help with. We don't need you to go around telling us that our brains are broken, that we are broken. We need you to fix the society that makes it impossible for us to navigate.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say that I found so heartless was his claim that autism destroys families.
Yeah. Yeah.
Find me fucking one.
Yeah.
Find me one family whose parents aren't full of love and compassion and joy at the life that they have with their autistic child, right?
Yeah.
Or a child of an autistic person who doesn't love their parents.
Yeah.
Find me fucking one.
Yeah. All across the spectrum, I have met, I do talks I've done talks, I have done events in which I have talked to parents of autistics from all ends of the spectrum. And the consistent thing that I hear is just profound love. Now, yes, autism does sometimes create more struggles. You want to help with those struggles, RFK? Don't focus on the fucking prevention bullshit. Again, focus on actually fixing society. All right? Fix society so there actually are services in place. Here's an example. Special education. Your boss, RFK, your boss is trying to get rid of the Department of Education, which helps to fund IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. It doesn't fund it enough, and it never has. But now, Donald Trump wants to take away the entire Department of Education, which basically means that states would be left to fend for themselves. And the first thing, one thing that I can tell you as someone who has actually served on an advisory board for a state-level Department of Education, the first thing that gets cut when there are budgetary cuts in schools is special education. That is a consistent fact. Instead of getting rid of the Department of Education, we actually need to have a system in which, for the first time ever, the Department of Education completely funds the promises that it had under the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. For once. Maybe advocate for that. You know, call up your boss and advocate for that if you actually want to help people on the autism spectrum. All right? And, you know, you keep claiming, oh, well, there are environmental factors, there are environmental chemicals. Motherfucker, the Trump administration is trying to pull back regulations on chemical plants right now. If you really think that's the cause, again, call up Donald Trump and say, hey, maybe don't deregulate chemical plants. At the end of the day, this was disappointing, but it wasn't surprising.
Yeah.
All right? And it's sad because the autistic community has been fighting so hard for social acceptance and has become more and more visible over the last few years. All right? More and more people are more open with being autistic. And that has been so nice to see. And the fact that this is coming out right now at a time where we have been pushing and pushing and pushing to be visible, to push for acceptance. And the fact that he said this during fucking April, which is Autism Acceptance Month. I prefer to say acceptance than awareness because we don't just need awareness, we need acceptance. The fact that he said this during Autism Acceptance Month is just a gut punch for all of the things that we have been fighting for. So you know what, RFK, I find it amazing to say this, but your father and your uncle literally almost destroyed the entire world during a pissing contest, and somehow you're still the most disappointing Kennedy. So you know what? Go fucking lick a doorknob at a measles clinic. And stay the fuck away from autistics.